Hello, my fellow tarot travelers. Welcome to Peace Slowly Tarot, where reading, teaching, and learning tarot come together. I want to welcome you. I welcome you to my Gifts and Opportunities series. New Year's for the 2023 New Year. I will be moving through 3 planets. That's my plan. I might add Neptune. I haven't decided yet. But the last time we met, I shared some information with you about Saturn and its implications for our lives. And now we are moving on to Uranus. And like I did with the last video recordings, part 1 is where I shared information about the planet. And then part 2, I do a tarot reading, pick a card, tarot reading, based on the energies that are associated with that planet and trying to get messages for us through tarot. So that's kind of where we are. I highly recommend that you listen to, and you can pause this particular recording and look for my Saturn message and reading, and then come back to Uranus, or you can just stick with me, go through Uranus. Doesn't have to be through any particular order, but if you want to really get a good sense of why I'm doing it this way, I highly recommend at least listen to part 1, Gifts and Opportunities from Saturn. So, all right. Before we get started, first, I want to thank those of you who have already subscribed, liked, and commented. I appreciate you. And for those of you who are new to this channel, I would really appreciate it if you find that you receive any kind of value from this message, to subscribe to my channel, like my video, also like this recording, and also add a comment. I always encourage people to add positive comments. Also, if you pick something up during the message that's being given, whether it's through tarot or what I'm doing right now, please share your insights, because we're all connected and we all are filled with great wisdom. That's what I was saying. So also, whenever you add comments or click subscribe or like, what you're essentially doing is making it possible for other people out in the world to stumble upon the chances of others seeing my videos increases because of the activity on the site. So I'm thanking you in advance for doing that. Also, I always like people to know my philosophy. I mean, I guess there'll become a time when I don't have to do this anymore. But right now I feel like I need to. We almost, and I like to say almost, always have a choice. And what I mean by that is that I don't view tarot as a fortune-telling tool, that predicts the future, that, this is definitely going to happen or it's not going to happen. I don't see it as a fortune-telling tool. It does not necessarily predict the future. It can show us how likely something is or isn't likely to happen based on the current energies or trajectory that you happen to be on at any given time. But because the world is so complex and our life paths are so complex, and the way we think and our emotions and our interactions with other people, external, internal factors, sometimes things shift, and what was maybe true, one day, a month from now, could be different, right? Or it could be the same. It depends, right? Also depends on the strength of the cards that are, depending on what you're asking. I also believe that the tarot readings reflect the soul. It can reflect what the collective may need at any given point in time. It could also reflect what you need at any given time. And it just comes from you. And the cards manifest what is actually inside of you. And then also, I believe that you can get messages through tarot from your guides, your ancestors, your angels, and other beings, high vibrational beings, can give you messages through the card, depending on what you're asking and what kind of help you're asking for. So that's kind of where I'm at with tarot. So Uranus, let's just jump right in with Uranus. So as I noted before about Saturn, Uranus has a return. And what a return means is that wherever that planet is in your chart, will end up in the same exact spot from just like the time that you were born, like everything being, equal, that it will return right to the same spot it was in when you took your first breath. So the question is, with Uranus, how long does it take for Uranus to make a complete trip through the zodiac? All 12 signs. It takes about 84 years. So you take your first breath, you're born, 84 years later, you will have your Uranus return. So there's only really one in a lifetime, right? It takes about 7 years to change its sign. So, and I'll talk to you in a second. I'll let you know about where Uranus happens to be at this very moment. But so like I mentioned, so it takes 7 years for the planet to get through, and I'm talking about Uranus, it's not the same for other planets. For this particular planet, it takes about 7 years to get through a sign. It takes about 84 years to make a complete trip through the zodiac signs. But there's also what we call a half return. And this is probably more important with Uranus than it is with some other signs, because in the case of Uranus, you only have one return. You live to be 84 years old, you have one return, right? But there's something called a half return. And that is really, that's like the middle of your life. Like, it's like the person's midlife crisis. It could be a midlife crisis. And if you see my images on the screen, what I always like to tell people, and I kind of said this about Saturn. So I'm saying it's the same for Uranus. It all depends on if we learn the lesson, if we figured it out and we learn the lesson. Not everybody's midlife has to be catastrophic. Not everybody's midlife has to be chaotic, because it all depends on your chart, obviously, but it also depends on, are you tuning into what's happening in your life? And when you know what it is that you need to do and you do it, right? Then chances are when you get to the midlife part, the midpoint of your life, the lesson or the crisis that we're supposed to be experiencing doesn't come in like a line, like for some people, right? If you notice, I have finally doing it right. Don't wait for the right opportunity to create it. With Uranus, and I guess I can move on to this next slide, the lesson or the questions that we should be asking ourselves when we hit the midpoint of our lives. So I want you to be thinking about right now, how old are you? And even if you are past the half, it's okay, right? You still, when I'm talking about Saturn and Uranus and Pluto, we are talking about lessons that an entire generation of people are having to learn. But also at the individual level, these are lessons that we also have to learn individually. And they are lessons that often take many, 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 many years to get through, right? So the half return, what are some of the themes that come up with the half return? Did you live authentically? So you get to the age of 42, right? You're in your 40s. What are you doing? So if you are in your 40s or you're getting ready to hit the age of 42 or before 42 or after 42, are you living your life authentically? Are you doing what it is that you really want to do? Are you living your dream? Are you living, that burning desire that you have inside of you that brings you joy, that lights your fire, right? The other thing with Uranus, and it's really interesting, this is just coming up for me right now. When we talk about the midlife crisis, and I will just use a stereotype, right? And the male, right? The male, he, gets himself a young girlfriend, gets a sports car, or even a female, right? Gets a younger man, starts losing a whole lot of weight and wearing different kinds of clothes. And I mean, I'm being very superficial and very high level. Any person really, right? Regardless of gender, right? Gets to a place where they're having an identity crisis, right? And there is this, for some people, there's this impulse that they begin to do things impulsively, like with the sports car, right? Not really thinking it through, just kind of going, on a whim, right? Again, this identity crisis. One of the things that is highly recommended when you are experiencing a Uranus return is to think things through carefully, plan in chunks. So instead of, making these big grand plans that, if you make them, you might not keep them. And it's one of the New Year's resolution, it's the word I'm looking for now. I haven't had brain fog, right? But it's typical when people make New Year resolutions. It's, oh, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to run 5 miles every day. I mean, that kind of that is very, it can be very Uranian, type energy, right? Just doing it, which is fine. But instead of running 5 miles a day, if you're thinking to yourself, is that really doable? Maybe I can start off by parking farther away from the front door of the supermarket and walk. because that's like right along with the rhythm of my life, because I'm always at the supermarket and there are always these big parking lots and I'm there anyway. I can get my walking in at that time, as opposed to I'm going to run 5 miles every day and then you do it for like 1 or 2 days and then you're done because you just like exhausted all your resources. Does that make any sense? um, Doing it your own way is a good sign. When you get to that point where you're tired of following other people's rules, you're tired of being on this other people's schedules. You are tired of living your life for other people. When you begin to feel that way, Uranus is somehow humming in the background. When you know what there are Uranus, when you hit a Uranus return, it may also be a time to do things differently from the way that you're doing it. And it could be in any area of your life. And also it depends on where Uranus happens to be in your chart. You know which house Uranus happens to be in your chart. That will give you an indication of where you might need to do things differently, where you need to forge a new path, where your deepest desires may seem odd to other people, but not to you, right? It's something that you have to do in your heart. It may not even make sense. It may not even seem logical, but it's what you need to do. A question that is associated with a Uranus path return: what's new and exciting, right? And again, Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto, and actually, well, yeah, I'm about to say something else, but I'm not. Saturn, Uranus, Pluto are the life lesson planets. And so the question is, did I learn the lesson? And again, it all depends on where Uranus happens to be in your chart. Just always want to throw that out there. So where is Uranus now? Uranus is in Taurus from about May 2018 to April 2026. And as a matter of fact, I have some notes that I want to share about Uranus being in Taurus. And remember, so Uranus, 19, 20, 22, 23. So we're more than at the halfway point with this transit. And a transit, and I don't know, I didn't mention, but a transit is how much time a planet spends in a particular sign. So when I ask the question, where is Uranus now? What I mean is, where is it in its transit? And it's in the sign of Taurus right now. And it will be in the sign of Taurus until it entered Taurus May of 2018 and will leave in April 2026, in a couple of years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Uranus and Taurus. First, think global when you think of Uranus being in Taurus. Uranus in Taurus is financially focused. So issues related to money. And I'll get into that a little bit about the money in just a second. Taurus, and what's very interesting about Taurus being in, or Uranus being in Taurus, is that Taurus doesn't like change. And Taurus moves slowly and steadily. But on the other hand, like I mentioned before, Uranus likes change. And it doesn't just like change, it likes change in a very abrupt way. Remember I mentioned buying a sports car, right? When change happens, no matter how chaotic, we look back and realize it was for the best anyway, which is a very Uranian type of belief, a thought. It is sometimes abrupt changes, although it may really shake things up and cause, and maybe it could be very messy at the beginning, but may end up being the best thing that could have happened, right? It was, I find very interesting, and I'll mention it, well, I was gonna mention COVID, and I'll mention it again in just a second. Revolution in the area of money. I think of Bitcoin. The other, this is very interesting. I read an article just a couple of days ago. And I don't recall all of the countries. I don't know. I'm missing one of them. I think it's China, India, Russia, South Africa, and Brazil. I think I got it. Those 5 countries are banding together. They're, getting together, and they want to come up with a new currency so that they're no longer reliant on the dollar, on the US dollar. That just happened. And I can tell you right now, that is a very Uranian, Uranus and Taurus kind of energy. Okay. You could be in your own life, be dealing with money issues. And not just money issues, banking, what happened with the Silicon Valley Bank, right? There was a serious shakeup and it collapsed, right? So bank collapses, we could have collapses of financial institutions, but we could also have new financial institutions pop up around this time. So banking, real estate, money systems changing or coming to a halt. Again, we see it, we are seeing it around us. And again, even though we are experiencing these energies on an individual level, like in our own lives, Uranus is a generational planet. And so there's a collective feel to this. Like, it's not like Mercury or Venus where, you might be feeling it, but, other people might not be because those planets move very quickly. But Uranus, Saturn, Pluto, many people are, feeling the brunt of the energy of this slow moving planet. Paying off debts and selling property may be something that came up for you around this time. I can attest to that part. What I thought, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking for, I think I lost my shoe. I like to keep my foot in the furry part of the shoe anyway. Remember the housing boom that we just had, like for the last couple of years. People were paying thousands of dollars above market value to buy a house that ordinarily they wouldn't even be paying that much money, right? So it's artificially, increasing the value of the houses around them. Housing shortages. People can't even find houses to buy, depending on where they live. So people were selling off their properties, which is amazing. Like I'm always amazed when the more that I learn about astrology, the more I grow. And then I just kind of see I see so many instances and manifestations of these energies. This is a time when we need to reevaluate our relationship with money and materialism. This is where I'm bringing up COVID-19. Think about how many people had to reevaluate their relationship with money and materialism during COVID, during the lockdowns. People losing their jobs, people's hours being cut, people are maybe working from home, people having to make a decision whether they can work because they have to take care of their children, doing more with less. Stores were shut down, businesses were closed, some businesses failed. All of those events. There was a lot of Saturn type energy too, with the lockdowns and the rules, right? Because we were in Saturn. Saturn was in Capricorn during COVID-19. Very strict structure, rules, and sometimes, there's always that shadow aspect of a planet. And we definitely felt the shadow of Saturn in Capricorn during COVID-19 lockdown. But right now, with Uranus and Taurus, I just want you to kind of be mindful of what's happening in the financial realm in your community. Be mindful of what's happening in the news about money. Again, Bitcoin, remember what happened with Bitcoin? I don't think Bitcoin is going away, but there was some concern about whether, it had its last day, right? So all of that is very much related to Uranus's transit in Taurus, which again will be with us until 2026. So, all right, so I have some notes like I always do. This is something I think is of like a signature, a hallmark of my readings. And I used to do this part before a reading, and then it just got too long. So I figured I will give some information, like teach you about the different energies surrounding a particular planet, and then a separate recording where we just do the readings, but we're drawing on the energies of that planet. So you could just do the readings if you want and look at the videos another time. But I kind of like to get into, when I'm doing my research and I'm doing my, meditations on these particular planets, it's almost like, you like become the planet. And the energies the lessons that we need to learn from those planets come out in the tarot and tarot, through tarot cards. That is really exactly how it works. So anyway, notes now for Uranus. So, and there are a lot. So I just I have them on the screen so I don't have to look at my notes on my pad anymore. So when you think of Uranus, right, and I've given you plenty already to think about. I am not going to go into detail about every word or phrase or, because we just don't have time to do that. But whatever resonates with you, something pops out at you, that's something you might want to make a note for yourself and then do some additional investigation on your own regarding like why something keeps coming up for you, right? All right, so when we're talking about the planet Uranus, notice I have the Fool tarot card, the Fool, right? And the Fool doesn't necessarily mean that a person is foolish. It could, but not always, right? Um, the Fool is the card of new beginnings, taking chances, um, you know, walking into a situation with your eyes closed without knowing all of the information, just kind of walking in faith, right? Um, yeah, Uranus is the Fool, represents the energy of Uranus. The other thing, and this was actually, I read this somewhere, I can't even remember where I read it, but I said, oh my gosh, that's so true. Notice how Uranus is, the ring is going the other way, like all the other planets that have rings, it's horizontal, and the ring on Uranus is like, that's how Uranus stands out. And Aquarius is a sign that is associated with Uranus. And so, Aquarians are very different and original, and stand out, and sometimes in a very awkward, I don't want to say weird kind of a way, but could come across other people that way. Walks to their own, beat of their own drum, right? And that's what the planet's doing. It's like, it's very different, operates differently from like, not even going by like what we would call the rules of the cosmos. Uranus is doing its own thing. And that, is part of the energy, right? So surprises, unexpected events, people, the future. Uranus is a very future-oriented planet. New technologies, AI, the AI chat, what is it? Anyway, you know what I mean. People are, teachers and, educational institutions are going nuts about the AI, the new AI technology can, diagnose illnesses, write papers, pass, medical exams, to become a doctor. It's unbelievable. And this, came out for everybody. And remember, this technology obviously existed before it, went to market so that everybody else around the world can have access to it. But it's a new technology for us. Uranus, right? All unimagined and yet to come. Rules electricity. That's very interesting. I can't, trying to think of something. Now I know in my own house, this is very interesting. We had one of the fuses went out, and the electricity is now off in like a certain section of my home where the washer and dryer is and a bathroom. And I'm thinking, okay, I can see that, I can, that's a very Uranian type of situation when the power goes out. I guess you could say the storm system that moved through the Midwest and the South recently created power outages. Innovation, scientific input, breaking the rules, challenging the establishment and other traditional structures, becoming woke. Now, I'm using the word woke, not in a way that you probably think. Not according to, well, I'm not even going to get political. But what I mean by becoming woke, I mean becoming conscious, right? Waking up from that slumber called being human. Wake up, right? Wake up. Paul Revere may have been, influenced a great deal. For those of you who are listening, tuning in from another part of the world, and if you are not familiar with American history, Paul Revere got on a horse and, rode out and gave a message out. I'm just making it really simple. Waking people up, like trying to alert people that the British were coming, right? Rebellion. Rebellion. Speaking of rebellion, independence. I should say this too. For those of you, and you might want to, I just hold on just a second. Need to adjust myself. All right, sorry about that. So the United States is actually in its Uranus return right now. In 2022, I believe, is where we hit that point. And I have not researched this in great detail yet, but the United States is experiencing its Uranus return. January 6th, right? The protests, Black Lives Matter, and that ended up becoming global. People all over the world were like, Black Lives Matter, anti-Asian hate, right? All of, everybody, people, any people who have been considered marginalized, underrepresented, underserved. Uranus is about, and I think I said it over here. Let's see, I think I said it on the other slide. Oh, maybe not. You didn't put it in there. I thought I did. I'm going to add it right now so that I have it. But it's also about humanitarian causes. And that is very much what has been happening. What's outlived its usefulness in our lives? And this, I think, I'm going to save for another series, actually. But I've always believed that there's an expiration date on things in our lives. That whole idea of what's outlived its usefulness in our lives. And give you an example that's, I think, an easy example. And one that we don't always have control over, but it's nevertheless an example. You have a job that you're in, and the spark isn't there anymore. You're not being challenged anymore. You kind of know your job inside and out, and there's no inspiration, no more drive, no more creativity. You're bored, I mean, you get the idea, right? What's outlived its usefulness in our lives? Sometimes how you overstay your welcome, or someone overstays their welcome, like someone's supposed to be at your home for 2 nights, and we're on day 7 now. It's the same with areas of our lives, relationships we have with people, jobs. It could be a routine. It doesn't have to be super big either, right? But there is a pattern to look for in our lives. Where is that for you in your life? What's outlived its usefulness? And again, It depends on where Uranus is in your chart. Uranus is about quick action, movement, results. Uranus is very cerebral. Again, Uranus and Aquarius. Uranus is an Aquarian planet, and Aquarians are very cerebral, very mental, without a lot of emotion. Blend is a blend, but what's beautiful about this Aquarian Uranian energy is that there's a blend of the intellect and intuition. Notice how I have the right and the left side of the brain. There's this beautiful interplay of the brain. The brain is working together as a cohesive whole, right? Trailblazers, social change, like I mentioned before, the humanitarian, right? I want you to think about what has occurred, particularly since COVID and all of the social justice protests. People wanting, are arguing in favor of freedom. And again, everyone might not not everyone may even agree on what is considered social justice, what is considered justice, what is considered freedom. As we noted, notice, and again, if you are, wherever you happen to live in the world, how is that playing out? Because remember, Uranus is a generational, it affects us collectively. It affects us individually as well, but really affects us collectively, which means many, 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 many people at the same time are having this experience, directly or indirectly. Change, freedom, social justice, where is that happening? Where you live in your community, because this is global. A new way of looking at things, expanded consciousness, opposing the status quo. Do not embrace authoritarian approaches. Look at what happened in Iran with the protests, right? Look what happened in Brazil. They booted out Bolsonaro. They have a new president, right? And we're even here in the United States. We went from Donald Trump to Biden, right? Opposing the status quo. Even if that's not what actually happened, I'm talking about what people believe that needs to happen. And they will make decisions against the status quo, even if that's not exactly what happened or how they voted. But in their eyes and their view, that is what they did. Freedom. Here's one that's interesting. Rules, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. Look at what happened in Turkey and Syria with the earthquakes. And also, there was another place that had, was it Peru that had an earthquake? Honduras, I believe, was another place. There's sometimes we have these seasons where it's like, oh my gosh, another earthquake. Oh my goodness, another volcanoes erupting. Aquarius is an androgynous energy, which should not be a surprise because again, here we have the integration of right and left, right? It's not left and it's not right. It's what it is. Has a very androgynous energy. All that is progressive, enlightenment, all associated with Uranus. So I want to share with you, this is something that's new, and I mentioned in my other videos, but this is totally experimental. I started this channel a year ago, over a year ago. And then I started out and I was on a mission and I was really like, in this feeling the rhythm. I had found a rhythm and then all of a sudden I fizzled out. And I think that Uranian energy, right? Where I was just like overly ambitious and so ambitious, instead of taking it in small chunks, I just went, fast forward, right? And then I ended up fizzling out. So I decided this year I was going to take a different approach. And if I get through this series, no, not if, when I get through this series, I will feel like I have accomplished my goal this year for this channel. If I do more, fantastic, right? But I want to share with you a superpower. And I don't think I'll always have a superpower segment for every video, but this will be the first. And if it comes up for me that there's a superpower related to what it is that is under discussion and examination, I will share the superpower with you. So the superpower is innovate. And it's funny because it is the superpower that I've kind of been focusing on this week. And this comes from something that's completely different from what we're doing here. But I could see where this fit in and I can integrate it. So I want to share with you. If you are, and you don't even have to be at the midpoint of your life, you can use this superpower at any time, right? I happen to use the superpower today when I was getting nervous about something that I was like thinking about. And I went straight to this superpower of innovate. And I got like whatever, cloud started to hang over me, it just like dissipated, like just totally disappeared. This is an exercise that you can use to get yourself out of a butt funk. And I will say, and this is something that I need to get over myself with too. Whenever you're talking with someone and they're like, yeah, but, and it's like, they're just totally negating like what, what you just said. And they may not even be meaning to do it. It's just a habit, But, so the Innovate superpower gets us to play the game of yes and. And so I'm going to share with you an example of how this works. And you can do this with almost any situation. And I picked a situation that is actually not made up. It's very much related to something that's real. But you can apply this in other situations. And I will bring this up again in other videos when I feel like it makes sense. And since we're talking about Uranus, the planet of innovation, I figured I want to share with you the Innovate power. And so how do we innovate? So if you're trying to come up with a new way to do something or the new way to be thinking about something, yes, and will help you consider options that you probably would not even consider. And sometimes I think I stayed within the realm of the sensible or what would appear to be sensible or reasonable. But if you play this game long enough, you may find yourself going into the realm of the impossibility, the impossible, what would seemingly seem impossible. The whole point is to get as many ideas, fresh and new and fresh ideas out there as much as we can. So here is an example with my camera, little screen. So here's the situation. Someone does not follow up with you right away by email, phone call, etc. Okay. we all relate to this, right? About a proposal that needs to be reviewed and signed. Okay, this is a work situation. So we have two people talking to each other and they're gonna use the yes and they're gonna use this Innovate Superpower using yes and. Person one, they are probably swamped and have many unread emails. Yes, I like that because it shows that the lack of response is not personal. And I could continue to complete my projects while I am waiting for a response. See? Now imagine, I'm going to just pause for a second. Imagine, I want you to notice how the energy changes when people use but, right? Yes, I like that because it shows that the lack of response is not personal, but I still think it's rude. Well, it just negated like what you just said, right? It does, right? So it's not personal. Oh, but it's rude. Yes, I like that because you will continue to fulfill your responsibilities. And you may be approached with other opportunities that may be better than the one you were waiting for, right? Yes, I like that because there are some other projects coming up. I may not have room for the extra hours after all. And I am developing materials that I could use when I am approached by another potential client. Yes, I like that because there may be other organizations that are ready for what you have to offer. And you may receive an offer better than the one that's currently on the table. Right? And it continues, like you can do this. I mean, this is just a snapshot of using this superpower of innovate. But notice there are no buts, right? There are no, oh, they're rude. Oh, they need to get their act together. They have so many communication problems in this organization. Oh, this person is just ignoring me. Oh, they probably don't like me. Oh, and the list goes on. And then what does that really do, right? You're not accomplishing anything. So you go into innovate mode. There are 4 other superpowers that I do want to share with you at some point when it makes sense. Today, this one makes sense. So again, the Innovate Superpower using yes and try it sometime. You can try it on, you can even do hypotheticals, right? You could even go back to a problem that you don't think you handled very well and go back and play this game with yourself. And just keep going and going, and you'd be surprised what something really magical. Sometimes magic happens just as a result of using this power. So Uranus in the chart. We all have Uranus in the chart. Wherever Uranus happens to be in your chart, and I will talk about where Uranus happens to be in my chart in just a moment. Usually it is the area. So whatever house it happens to be, whether it's the 4th house, the 11th house, the 8th house, the 1st house. I want you to think of these themes. Refusal to blend in with others and our situations. Erratic life patterns. It's also an area where you may feel like you want to be free. You may not. It depends, right? It's an area of life where we need more structure or we need more flexibility. It could be either or. And I want to say this too, which is very interesting, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but I want you to notice the order in which the planets, and I may do a separate video on this at some point, but notice the way that the planets are arranged, like the way they line up. And you have Saturn and then you have Uranus. And what's very interesting is that Saturn is, there's structure, there's tradition, they're following the rules, there's hierarchy. And then then there's that transition to Uranus. Don't want to follow rules. I want to do things my own way. I want flexibility. I don't want a lot of structure. And so it is very interesting that depending on where Uranus happens to be in your chart, you will have to make that determination. Okay, Uranus is here. This is what this house means. Uranus is in this house. So let me think about my life, this area of my life. Do I need more flexibility or do I need more structure? Am I feeling confined in any kind of a way, right? Is there a lack of stability in my life, or do I have stability? Do I need more stability or less stability? That Uranus, that energy from Uranus, if it's like completely out of control, because remember, there's light and shadow for every planet, right? Maybe there's too much, freedom, too much flexibility, and you need to rein it in a little bit, right? So it all depends. But this is just the general, very general about Uranus. Again, you have to look at your own chart. Where is Uranus in my chart? So I'm sharing this with you. I'm not going to get into the specifics of it, but you can go into your chart and just kind of look at where Uranus happens to be. And in my chart, Uranus is in Libra. And I have, you can look at my images. So people who have Uranus in Libra are great mediators, and they're like social justice warriors, which, if you knew like my job, this would not surprise you. But even throughout my entire life, I was always like trying to protect the underdog, the people who were on the margins, people who were, sometimes they're the ones that were not being seen. Those are the people that I would pay attention to. Anyway. But I wasn't one to play favorites either. And I've been in education, I think I mentioned that before. So, and I have taught everything from elementary all the way up to college, which is what I'm doing now. Anyhow, Uranus and Libra. Hold on, my cat. Sorry about that. Uranus opposes Chiron, Uranus square ascendant, Uranus, okay, here we go, sesquiquadrate. I got it. Sesquiquadrate, north node. I'm going to look that up and confirm that I'm saying that correctly. Mercury octile Uranus and fourth house in Virgo. Oh, Uranus is in my fourth house in Virgo. So that is where Uranus, sorry, I'm getting a little hot, happens to be. So the question is, where is Uranus in your chart? And so I mentioned this before, and I've been using the same name and the same Miranda, Syracuse, July 17, 1994, 17. Right, this, I haven't looked at this in so long. This is not a real person, although maybe there is a person out there with this name, with this, I wouldn't even be surprised if that were the case. So we've got Miranda, we got Syracuse, we've got July 17, 1980, 417. And so for those of you, if you don't know how to, and there is a reason why I'm using two different charts, and I will share with you. This one's the easiest to look at. And I'll explain in just a second. Um, oh, great. Wonderful. Yes. Look at that. Okay, so it remembered. Okay, so we have got, so Miranda, if you look at her chart, you can see where, so here's Uranus. So Miranda has Uranus in Scorpio, retrograde, which is very interesting. And planets do go retrograde even while they're making their transit. We're not going to talk about that today, but just kind of notice it. And then if you look down here, there are the aspects. And you just kind of go down, you know, Uranus square North Node, Uranus opposition Chiron. Yes, they would, well, that's a whole other conversation, but I have that in my chart too. Uranus conjunct ascendant. And then that's it. So this person, I don't believe Miranda doesn't have as many, I have more of Uranus than she does. Or maybe not. No, maybe not necessarily. No, maybe she has more than I do. Uranus semi-sextile Neptune, Uranus semi-sextile Pluto, Uranus quintile midheaven. And then, of course, we go down, we look at the houses, and we look for where Uranus is, and Uranus for Miranda is in the 12th house. So, and so that's kind of, you know, this one, I like to use this particular chart generator because it's organized so clearly. Now, with that being said, if you want information about July, about the different parts of the chart, I always think this is a really great introduction to 417. And just to kind of get your feet wet. Oh, Syracuse, New York. Oh, it's not. All right. Oh, I see. Right there. All right. Okay. So now I think I'm gonna see this. Okay. Ooh, excuse me. Okay, so notice the difference between the charts. Like this one, I think it could be very off-putting to someone who is new to astrology. It looks very busy. And so if you're just looking at, if you just want a high level overview of your, if you want a high level overview, you know, then this is using astro charts is your best bet. And then if you want a reading, if you want to see, you can get the same information from this site, but Cafe Astrology is very generous, very, very generous, and will actually give you a description of everything, including the aspects. And you can get a really good sense of, you know, Venus is in Gemini. You know, well, what does that mean? And you get some information about Venus and Gemini. And you'll find that some of it applies to you and some of it doesn't. And it doesn't apply because our charts are so complex that the different energies are really playing with, sometimes against each other, sometimes complimenting each other. It really depends, right? So as you read through the descriptions again, some of it may apply, some of it may not, and that's perfectly fine. But I just wanted to share that with you. For those of you who feel like, you don't know anything about astrology, I think that these are really great places to start. And you can do it. You can do it, right? So that's it for Uranus. So Pluto is next on our list of planets. But before we get to Pluto, I want to invite you, when I actually post the reading, I want to invite you to Gifts and Opportunities, Messages from Uranus, Part 2, pick a card tarot reading. And we are going to get some messages from Uranus. What areas of our lives, do we need to do something different? Where do we need to break out of our shell? Where do we need to be more flexible? Or maybe we're too flexible and need more structure. So we will find out just some of those things in a pick a card reading, which will be coming up really soon. I hope that this message was helpful for you. I am, like I said, I consider myself still a newbie with, posting to YouTube and getting on Zoom and recording messages. And so please bear with me. It'll get better as time goes on. I think I've already improved from last year, which is great. So stay tuned for a pick a card reading. And again, hit like, subscribe, comment, and that's it. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you at the message from Uranus reading. Bye now.